The New York Mets will once again face elimination tonight. Is there any magic left in this season? We'll talk about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, here it is. Game 5. Mets down in this series 3-1 to Los Angeles Dodgers. And after now their third blowout loss in this series and their second in a row at home, it does feel like hope is evaporating quickly. But you still have 27 outs to play with. And one thing I'll say, we'll talk about throughout this entire show, this is not a Mets team to give up on. Now, could it end tonight? Absolutely. But I'm going to hold out hope that the Mets can delay what could be inevitable. But with each passing potential victory, it becomes less and less of a mountain decline. So the way you have to look at it is simply this. Can the Mets win Game 5 against the Dodgers? And I wholeheartedly believe they can. And the first big step in that was deciding who's going to pitch and open up the game for the Mets. Carlos Mendoza announced after the Game 4 loss that David Peterson will take the ball. Now, going into this series, I did a show where I talked about this being a full circle moment for the New York Mets because when everything looked dire at the beginning of the season in May, when the Mets looked dead in the water and they had that players-only meeting after Jorge Lopez launched his glove into the stands, that game was against the Dodgers. The Mets got swept by the Dodgers at Citi Field in that series. David Peterson took the ball for the first time this season in that game. And the Mets had a chance late and they did not get the job done. So talk about full circle moments. The Mets, just like that series back in May, have lost the first 2 games. Just like that series back in May, the fan base does not believe in this team largely. They're still the diehards. Deep down, they're still the fans that believe. But ultimately, when you're staring down elimination and the team is as good as the Dodgers are that you're going up against, I can understand the lack of optimism. And I don't think that I am riding a high of optimism right now myself. I can't say right now, talking into this microphone, that I fully believe the New York Mets can win this series. Winning 3 games in a row against that Dodgers team is tough. But what I will say is I fully believe they can win this game. If they win this game, with Sean Manaea on the hill in Game 6 against a potential bullpen game, I will fully believe the Mets can win that game. And then if that all happens and you get to a Game 7, it is a Game 7. And anything can happen. So first things first, you focus on Game 5. And David Peterson, full circle, gets his second shot this year against the Dodgers. Well, second shot's a starting pitcher. And we'll see what he does going up against the Dodgers ace right now, which is Jack Flaherty. But the Mets have stared down elimination before. They were down to their final out, and Pete Alonso delivered that huge home run. When it was the final week of the season before that against the Brewers, they were on the ropes. We thought, man, this season that was so incredible is going to end with them just outside the playoffs. And they got the job done. So maybe tonight they will finally break through again against this Dodgers team and turn it into a real series. Now, I like the move by the Mets to go to David Peterson. With you facing elimination, you really can't go to Kodai Senga. I don't think they're ever really planning to. I think the only way they would have gone to Kodai Senga is if the game situation dictated in Game 4 that David Peterson could come in, pitch in a big spot, and that was going to be the difference to win a game. And if that happened, then you would just try to piece it together in game 5, but knowing that you had already extended the series to at least 6 games where Manaea would get the pitch again. I think that's the only way that Kodai Senga is actually going to start game 5. They said Kodai Senga is available. Are the Mets going to use him? Anyone's guess. But I feel like the plan going into this one is David Peterson's making a regular start. That's what Carlos Mendoza said. There's no pitch count. There's no limits. He threw same day as Kodai Senga did, game 1 of this series. He should be rested. He should be ready to go. Don't know if you're going to get 90 pitches out of him unless he's absolutely cruising. But could David Peterson put up 5 zeros and the Mets let him stay on there for all of that? Absolutely. You still have Ryan Stanek and Edwin Diaz fully rested. Reed Garrett fully rested. Phil Maton, don't know how many she pitched in this game 4. Wasn't a ton, but I think the roadmap obviously is Peterson. And if you have a lead, it's hoping that you get as deep in the game with him as possible. Then you go to Reed Garrett. And you sort of see, right? If you have to go to Reed Garrett in the 4th inning and he gets you out of a jam and it's a tight game, you might have to go to Kodai Senga because you just don't have a lot of options. But this is going to be a big moment for David Peterson. I'm excited to see it, right? Because David Peterson has been one of the best stories of this New York Mets team, what he has done from starting the final game of the disaster that was the May collapse by the Mets to then the Mets winning, I think, what was it, his first 8 starts after that, and just always being on the mound. And getting a ton of run support really was a big part of it, but he was great as well. It wasn't just they were scoring for him. Now you need to see that again. The lineup has to break through for him, but David Peterson is going to get a shot here. In that game against the Dodgers at the end of May, he went 5 innings. He allowed 7 hits, 3 runs, only 2 of them earned. Did give up a home run in that game to Will Smith. So now he gets another crack at this lineup in a start, his first playoff start. So I'm sure he's going to be fired up. And I got a lot of confidence that David Peterson can get the job done. Now, the tough Dodgers lineup he's going up against, and I had confidence in Jose Quintana too. So maybe it's misplaced confidence, but you got to believe in this team at this point. Yes, it feels like the end is near because it is, but the Mets can delay that. And again, while I can't say right now I have faith that the Mets are going to win 3 in a row, what I will say is I have faith they're going to find a way to win this game and at least push this series back to LA. Now, on the other side, you have the guy that started off this series in LA against the Mets, who was absolutely dominant. So David Peterson's going to have his work cut out for him to be matching the performance of Jack Flaherty on the other side. How will the Mets go up against Flaherty? Are we going to see any changes to the lineup? I'll talk about all that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to the doctor's office and get treatment for ED, but through Hims, you can get personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. This process is 100% online, so there's no need for those uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option for you. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's Hims, HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. Hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with the healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to get to 11,000 subscribers by the end of the postseason. I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Also, put that notification bell on. I appreciate all of you who tuned into our live stream after Game 4. I'll be going live to recap whether it's the end of the season or a big Mets victory after this game 5. So if you hit that notification bell, you'll be notified if and when I go live. All right, so let's talk about Jack Flaherty. The Dodgers decided to go to their ace for this game 5, which is not a big surprise. They could have gone bullpen game if they wanted to preserve Flaherty for the World Series, but you have no idea how long that series is going to go between the Yankees and the Guardians. I believe there'll be a layoff regardless. Let's just say the Yankees end that series in 5 games as the Guardians took game 3. So it's going to go at least that long. That would still extend to, what? Today was Thursday, so that extend at least through Saturday. I believe there'll be some off days regardless. So if he pitches on Friday, I mean, they'll still have Jack Flaherty for 2 starts in the World Series no matter what. But more importantly, they're trying to win right now. That's what Dave Roberts said. They're not trying to, get cute with it and save them and go to the bullpen instead. They're going to Flaherty to put their foot down the Mets' throats, and it's up to the Mets to somehow battle back into this series and get runs on Jack Flaherty after he went 7 shutout against them in game 1. The good news, Evan Phillips threw 34 pitches. Blake Treinen threw 23 pitches. So I wonder if Phillips is going to be available. I wonder if Treinen is going to be available. They'll still have Michael Kopech. They still have a lot of good relievers, but they did have to use some of their guys for some extended work in game 4. So maybe you might get a little bit of softer matchups when it comes to that bullpen, especially if you can knock Flaherty out of the game early, which is going to be a tough task. Now, what are the Mets going to do to avoid getting shut out by Flaherty again? Are they going to roll with the same lineup? Jesse Winker should be back in there. I think that's going to be pretty clear. It was him and Iglesias that got the 2 hits against Flaherty, who, again, went 7 innings, scoreless, 2 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. So I imagine Winker is going to be in there. In his career prior to this, 9 for 24 against Flaherty in the regular season with 3 doubles and 2 homers. So he's got to be in the lineup. The question is at DH or in right field. As much as Starling Marte has struggled in his career against Jack Flaherty, he still hit one to the warning track against them, and I just can't see the Mets benching Marte at this point. I think he's going to be in the starting lineup. So I imagine Winker's going to DH, and JD Martinez will be on the bench for this one. Now, beyond that, Nemo's going to be in the outfield, right? Alonso's going to be at first. Lindor's going to be at short. Vientos, even though he looked bad against Flaherty, will be at third. Francisco Alvarez will be behind the dish. The only question is, does Jeff McNeil get a start in this series? Would they consider starting him in left, putting Brandon Nimmo in center with their backs against the wall? Considering Nimmo's injury, you wouldn't think so, but this is the game where you throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. I would not be stunned if that happens. You also could put Starling Marte in center field. He did play center for a lot of his career. He is not the athlete he used to be out in the outfield, but it would be another option. Again, you are definitely leaning hard into offense if you go that route by not playing Tyrone Taylor or Harrison Bader, but maybe you got to be drastic in a back against your wall game. It would get you a better lineup for sure. The other option would be to start Jeff McNeil at second base. It just doesn't feel like they're going to sub Iglesias out of these games. It just doesn't. Even though I don't feel like the at-bats have been particularly good throughout this playoffs in general, but particularly this series, I just can't see Carlos Mendoza pulling him out of the lineup. Not that it's all Mendoza's decision. I'm sure that the starting lineup is a collaborative process with the front office, but I would be very surprised if Iglesias isn't in there. So with that said, whether Jeff McNeil starts or not, he's not going to save your season single-handedly. It's going to be Pete Alonso coming through, Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte. All these guys got to step up and just find a way. And I am excited to watch a back against their wall Mets do what they can to try to score on this really good pitcher. Because the Mets have been able to all year go up against other teams' aces and get the job done. How many times did we see, and it's not a common occurrence just because it's very hard to do, but I feel like it happened 3-4 times where the Mets sent 4 guys to the plate and they all scored, where a couple guys would get on and there'd be a big home run. Maybe you have a 3-run homer and then the next guy goes yard 2 for back-to-back, or, double home run. We've seen that. Doing that against Jack Flaherty is not going to be easy, but again, as a Mets fan that is pulling for this team, you got to hope that this lineup has one more big night in them and they can score on Flaherty and push this thing back to LA. We'll see. It's not an easy matchup. On paper, you look at it and the Dodgers have an edge. Jack Flaherty going up against David Peterson should be big advantage Dodgers. But I felt like the Mets had a big advantage in game 3. I thought they had, if not an advantage, at least a toss-up in game 4 with Quintana versus Yamamoto. Those things haven't proved to be the case. Now we'll see what happens. We'll see if the Mets can shock the world because everyone's expecting the Dodgers to just run through the Mets one more time, get themselves to the World Series. I just want to see the Mets push this thing to a game 6, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Will the season end tonight? We'll go through it. First, though, another word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today, where you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So you can turn $10 into $1,000. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. If you're an everyday listener of the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways and get a live graphic sent to your phone each day. So those are the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, I'm Googling something real quick. How many days since May 12th? 159 days. I have done this show for 159 consecutive days since May 12th. There's been at least one episode of Locked On Mets a day and sometimes 2, particularly throughout this playoff run. And the season might end tonight. And if it does, we'll get to 160 because I'll do a live stream after the game and I'll do a end of the season show for Saturday morning to just put a bow on what was a remarkable 2024 season. But then Sunday, I'll take the day off. And, as much as that they talk about all these players who no one's playing healthy right now, not to make myself seem like a player, but I'll tell you what, this week, as I've been doing these 2 shows a day, the throat's been hurting a little bit. The vocal cords have been stretched. And I've had a rest like the last couple of days, like trying not to talk around the house so I could do these shows, not to have you pity me or anything. I love what I do, but it's just to say that despite all that, despite how nice it might be to get a day off, I don't want one, right? I don't want this season to end. I don't want this fairy tale ride to be over. I don't want to turn the page to 2025 and think about what's next and think about Pete Alonso's future with the team and think about who's coming back from this group that we all fell in love with. Is Jose Iglesias going to be back? Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, JD Martinez? Probably not. But hey, topic for another day. Jose Quintana, like all of these guys that this fan base has grown to fall in love with. You don't want to say goodbye. And that's coming, right? It's inevitable. And I think personally, I felt that since that final week of the season when the weather got into play and I was moving at the same time. So it felt like the end of, a place I'd lived in for a couple of years. And it felt like the season, like I feel like I've been sort of pushing that feeling down for a couple of weeks now. And we've gotten such an amazing run. I don't want to see it end. And I want to be hopelessly optimistic until I can't anymore. I just want to see the Mets win one more. And then after that, I'll get greedy and I want to see them win one more. And then I'll get greedy again and I want to see them win this series. And I'll get greedy again and I want to see them win the World Series. And, put a banner up and have another champagne shower or two and see this turn into a year that is minted as it already is one of the greatest in franchise history, but one of the 3 championships. Like, they got so close that they're still 7 wins away, and it might just end there, 7 wins away. And if it does end tonight, we'll be sad. We'll be disheartened. I'll do one more show. I'll take the day off on Sunday. We'll turn the page to the offseason. We'll start talking about Juan Soto and Pete Alonso and all those offseason topics and who's getting the qualifying offer, what free agents are out there, what do the Mets need to do, which prospects. We'll get into all of that. Like, this show will never completely stop. It'll always be 5 days a week throughout the entire offseason. I'm not going away completely, but it's been 7 days a week for a while now. And I have clung on to this team like a raft when they were bad. And then when they got good, it just was such an amazing thing to continue to just chronicle what now goes down as one of the best seasons of franchise history, even if they don't win another game, one of the most memorable. In my lifetime, it's, right now, I'd say it's second only to 2015, and 2006 was another one for me. I was a little too young for the 1999 and 2000 runs. I remember Mike Piazza. I remember Ventura. I remember Edgardo Alfonso, Al Leiter, Benitez. Like, I remember those teams very well still, like the players, but I was 4 or 5 years old. I wasn't in it the way I was in 2006 when it was like my guys. I mean, I've said it before. I have number 5 and a lot of my passwords for emails and things like that. Not that I should reveal that, but I had number 5 on my jersey in travel baseball. And, like that David Wright and Jose Reyes and Beltran dugout, like that was my first team. And 2006 ended in such a miserable way. And then 2015 was so amazing. That was such a pivotal point in my life where I was still sort of figuring out what I was going to do. And I started covering Mets baseball for Metsmerized in 2015, wrote my first article about why the Mets should sign Daniel Murphy in that offseason instead of Yoenis Cespedes in September of 2015. And that sort of sparked a career in all this stuff back then when I was 19 years old. But yeah, here we are. And this has just been such a welcome surprise this season. It's been awesome. And in May, when that players only meeting happened, I covered it, and I thought this could be a turning point. Like, all of the makings were there, but you just watched some of the worst baseball we've ever seen. In May, I had a running theme for about 2 weeks, if I remember right, where I had the same cold open that would play. And it was like it was like the Groundhog Day of misery for the New York Mets continue, something like that. And I played it every time the Mets blew a game because that's what the season was. And that was compounded off of 2023 when the Mets were a disaster. Disaster. Then my dad and I take a trip for his birthday to watch the Mets in Washington, D.C., and we watch a sweep. And I remember doing shows late at night in the parking garage under a hotel. Like, hey, it kind of looks good. We'll see what the Mets look like in London. Oh, wow. Dramatic victory, game 2 of the London series. Let's see what it looks like when they come back. Oh, wow. Series after series after series, week after week, month after month. Deadline their buyers. Who would have thought that? Did they buy enough? August, slight dip, boom, right back up in the race. People were not believing this Mets team all the way up to the final day of the season. There was still some out there that thought the Mets were going to get swept by the Braves and not make it in that doubleheader. And certainly when the Mets, came, when Schwellenbach went the first 7 scoreless and the Mets are losing 3-0, everyone thought it was potentially over. Are the Mets going to be able to win a game 2 that the Braves don't care about? Then they rally. They score 6. The Mets are in it. Then they give up 4 runs. They're out of it. Then Lindor hits the home run. They're in it. Down to your final out. I completely was ready to give up. I'll own it. I learned a lot. I did the whole reverse jinx thing throughout the season. I've given up on it now. Maybe I got to go back to it. But I gave up on it because it wasn't a good look when I called Pete Alonso mentally weak when he dropped the pop-up on Twitter because I was emotional because the season was about to end. And I was a little bit of a baby about it. And I had watched Pete Alonso come up small all season long, and he didn't do anything throughout that game and hadn't done anything in a while, and he drops a pop-up. I'm like, yeah, there's no way this guy's going to come through. And I said, I hope I jinx him, and I did. And he hits a 3-run homer, and hope was back, and they beat the Phillies. And you just don't want to see it end. Even now, I don't want to end this show because it's one less show, right? It's hitting end on this recording, and now I just got to wait and watch a baseball game. This has been such an amazing ride for the New York Mets. And when we do turn the page to 2025, we'll have a lot to look forward to because this franchise is in great shape moving forward. And I will spend an entire offseason telling you guys why the farm system's in better shape than you might think, how the pitching staff can build on this, the guys that are coming back, the McGills, the Petersons, Kodai Senga hopefully being healthy, Paul Blackburn, forgotten guy who'll be in the fold next year, Brandon Sproat going to make his debut next year. All those things, we will get into them. We'll talk about the significance of this year for Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo and their leadership of the Mets moving forward, their two pillars. And we'll talk about the future of Pete Alonso, as this could be tonight the last game that Pete Alonso wears a Mets uniform, which as much as you can dream about Juan Soto and think that's where all the money should be spent in free agency, I just can't imagine Pete in another jersey. Just like a couple years ago, I couldn't imagine Jacob deGrom in another jersey. When deGrom won game 2 of that wild card round against the Padres, I did not at all think it was the last time he was going to wear a Mets uniform. I didn't think it was the last time we would hear a simple man play as deGrom warmed up for a Mets game. And it could be the end for Pete Alonso tonight. So 5:08 Eastern. I, like all of you, will tune in and see if the Mets have a little more magic left in them. If they win this game, we'll get 48 hours of hope because it'll be an off day on Saturday. Until then, though, David Peterson versus Jack Flaherty, 9 innings, 27 outs. Can the Mets pull off one more victory, one more magic moment? Can they delay the end for one more day? I'll be back either way. Live stream after the game, podcast Saturday morning. Thank you all for tuning in. If you are listening on the audio side, do me a favor, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Give the show a 5-star rating. Leave a review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Want to get to 11,000 subscribers by the end of the postseason. I appreciate all of you. Subscribe. If you want to be a Locked On Mets Insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. After your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. We're talking about Locked On Sports today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.